So Zack Snyder's Justice League has been out for a long time now, and if a 4-hour film wasn't satiating enough already, as is somewhat typical for him, Snyder has released 2 versions of his film. There's the standard version, and the Justice is Grey edition, this being the black and white cut. So what effect does this black and white version have on the overall experience of watching this film? Does it make any difference? Does it change the feel at all? Is it worth watching this black and white version in addition to the standard cut? Well, let's get into all that now. So ultimately, yes, I think the black and white version of this film does provide a different enough experience to justify itself. Some have said it's actually the better version of the film, and while I remain ambivalent on that, I certainly understand why one might feel that way, and indeed, do consider some sections of the film to work better in black and white than in colour. A good scene to start with as an example for this is the so-called history lesson scene. This scene, cool as it is, and it really is, to some degree suffers from the same problem a lot of large-scale green screen battle scenes suffer from. This being that, in spite of the vast, expansive landscape shown in the background, the action in the foreground for certain moments feels quite tight and cramped. There's a disassociation between background and foreground for some shots in scenes like these, presumably because the performers are of course on a soundstage much smaller than the digital landscape superimposed behind them. The green screen behind the performers is much closer to the foreground than the image overlaid onto it is meant to imply. There's an uncanny feel to such shots. The depth is slightly off for background to foreground, and there's a weird flatness to the backgrounds. I think the same issue is present in the final battle of Avengers Endgame. That always felt quite cramped to me. It's possible that the more vast and fantastic you make the digital background, the less real it looks, because it's not integrated with enough real-world objects and sense of reference for realistic scale. To further highlight this, we can consider how the inverse comes across, i.e. mostly real environments with minor CGI enhancements or objects placed in the background can be so well blended that often one can't tell there's anything about the images that's not real. Putting this Justice League scene in black and white really helps to alleviate this problem of uncanniness. By removing the colour, the digital blends with the real far more smoothly. Things which stand out as fake, given away by the details of texture colours highlight, are hidden by removing the colour from the images. Another good example is the Martian Manhunter scenes. The CGI for this character was quite poor, seemingly unfinished. Of course, the timescale was tight for getting this film put together, and one of the places it shows seems to be with this character. But again, putting his scenes in black and white really helps to hide the weird, textureless digital surfaces, blending the CGI model with the environment more smoothly, hiding imperfections which the colour highlights. Now of course, the traits and virtues this version of the film has are not simply limited to technical enhancements such as these. The black and white aesthetic gives the film a timeless feel, taking it out of genre, as Snyder has said himself, removing all the expectations associated with genre, and removing all contemporary context around CGI and blockbuster filmmaking techniques. I wonder if perhaps there's a subconscious association with older films from the early days of cinema, which also makes these modern images feel far better integrated. Blending an old-fashioned look with modern CGI like this is novel and interesting, and all of this may additionally distract from the technical imperfections. The black and white, combined with the narrative and other aesthetic components, evokes vibes of 1950s samurai cinema, a genre which Snyder has said influenced the film, specifically referring to Seven Samurai. Superheroes are all about colour. The use of lots of diverse colours is one of the core components of psychological language used to communicate things such as good versus evil. Subverting that genre staple makes for a weird and interesting experiment. Of course, before colour cameras came along, superheroes on screen were depicted in black and white, but that was out of necessity. We have decades of new expectations placed on these films now. The fact that they'll be in colour is normally a given, making the subversion of this staple a fairly unique thing to attempt. So to reiterate, this black and white cut makes for an interesting experiment, and I would say is unique enough in its own right to be worth watching in addition to the normal cut. But what do you think? Have you watched the Justice is Grey edition? If so, do you agree with what's been said here? Have I convinced you to give it a try? Let me know in the comments below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more videos like this and others about other stuff too, and click the bell end to receive alerts of when the next video is posted. Thanks for watching, see you next time.